Welcome to the Fayetteville Police Department's new television show, Behind the Badge. And this month we're very happy to have with us Chief Harold Medlock. Harold, we're glad to have you with us.
Thanks so much, George. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're very excited about our new TV show.
Of course, this show today we're going to be talking about the Homicide Unit here and some of the many things that they do and the challenges they have. Last year you all solved all but one murder, which gave you about a 96% clearance rate. So you do have a top flight homicide unit, don't you?
We do. This is a very small group led by a captain, a lieutenant, a sergeant, and just a few detectives. We had 25 murders in the city last year, which are 25 too many. We should not tolerate not one murder in our city any year, and so our goal is to always drive that number down to zero. But what I want our citizens to know is that when they commit a crime, or when they commit a homicide, or one of their family members may be a victim of a homicide, we don't stop until that person that caused that death is in jail. We are not going to allow a murderer, we're not going to allow folks that kill people to walk our streets. And it's been awe-inspiring to watch this team of detectives and their chain of command go until they can hardly walk, because they will not go home until they have done all they can to further that case. And most times, George, in those 24 out of 25 cases last year, most times they arrest the suspect in that crime before they go home.
We were talking earlier about gangs in our community and young people, 14 and 15 years old, and I jokingly said when I was coming along, a fashion statement for me was a pair of Basswegian shoes. Today, for many young people, a fashion statement is a gun.
Absolutely, and it is so easy for a young person to get a gun now. They're stolen and traded for pennies on the dollar. So it's easy at a street level, unfortunately, for our children to get a hold of guns. They don't understand the permanence of what they do with that gun, and as a result, we have arrested 2 people in the last 6 months, one this year, one in the summer of last year, as young as 14 years old, who are charged with murder. That shouldn't happen. That is unacceptable for this community and any other community. And it's not just a Fayetteville problem. This is going on across the country in every city, large and small. And so we have to do something to intervene with these kids, to let them know that maybe it's a pair of tennis shoes now. In my day, you said the Basswegians. In my day, it was the ID bracelet that we wore in junior high and high school and gave them to the girls and that thing. But now to have a gun tucked in the waistband of your pants is supposedly a fashion statement or a status symbol. That's warped thinking, it's warped behavior. Over the past months, we have found gang members from other cities that have come here that we have caught and charged in criminal activity. And the thing I ask our detectives to always do is tell them to go home. We don't want them in our city. We want them to come back for their trial, but don't come back to Fayetteville to do your criminal activity. Go home, stay out of our city. And that's the attitude we have to take. I love this job. I'm passionate about being a cop, but I am truly weary, George, of seeing young people's lives wasted, both as victims of gun violence and as suspects in gun violence or those charged with it. You know, it's interesting. I watch a lot of the interviews outside the interview room as the detectives are talking to these young people. And it's amazing to me the number of folks over these years that I've done this job that find it hard to believe when they're told the person you shot is dead. They don't understand that. They don't comprehend it. They think they can hit a reset button on a video game or hit the start over button on a computer, an internet game, or start the DVR over and play the movie over, because at the end of the movie, the hero gets up, kisses a girl, and they go off into the sunset. They don't realize the carnage that they cost other lives. You know, in death certainly, but then the people that don't die, these young people that don't die, that are relegated to a wheelchair or to crutches or a colostomy bag or some other lifelong permanent disability because of the carnage of a bullet. And it's amazing to sit and watch them in disbelief as it finally dawns on them that they've taken a life, that their life that they knew is now changed, and that in most cases they're not going to see another free day in their life. It's sad to watch that transformation in that interview room.
Your homicide units, do they investigate other than murders? Do they investigate all deaths? I mean, suicides and things like that?
The suspicious deaths, the suicides, and some serious life-threatening shootings that might occur, life-threatening assaults that might occur. And these folks don't just run the 25 murders that we talked about earlier, but they're probably called out about 75 or 80 times a year to deal with those unnatural deaths. And sometimes you joke and say, well, no death is natural, but truly it is. Their death is a natural part of life, but they do spend a lot of time representing the dead in our city and making sure that that those folks' families and that they get the justice that they deserve, either in a suicide, a suspicious death, might be an overdose or something like that, but just to make sure that everything is right so we can assure the families that that we have developed all the answers that we could, and that we have some assurance that we know how that person died.
We're going to, of course, be talking and looking some more at the homicide unit, but what would you like for the people of this city to know about your police department?
Well, we have 397 sworn positions in this department. I believe we have one of the finest police departments in this country, and I've had the opportunity to travel around over the years. I came from a fantastic police department in a great city. These folks are constantly seeking the best, most innovative ways to protect this city. They're not afraid to try new things. They're enthusiastic. I told the new recruit class last week that I envied them because the things that will happen for them in the next 30 years in this profession, I just can't even imagine based on what's happened to me in the last 30 plus years. So I know that the leadership of this department continues to explore the most innovative ways to provide the best service that we can to this city. 2014, you'll see things that we're rolling out, like our new Crime Information Center, which is a real-time crime center. It allows support personnel in a very dark and closed room to provide information on calls for service to our officers and to our detectives as they're responding to the scene of a crime or a call. I really hope that just in the next couple of weeks we'll have our first 10 citywide cameras up. And those will be primarily in the downtown area in partnership with the Downtown Alliance. We plan to install some license plate readers in 2014, which if I could give you just a use of that real quick, but license plate readers will, as an example, if my mother were to develop Alzheimer's or something like that and got in her car and went missing, we could plug her tag number into the license plate system, and if she drives through one of the locations where the license plate reader is, we'll know when she came through, the direction that she was going, and it helps us to start narrowing down the search. Mm. Likewise, if we have a bank robber or a store robber or a bad guy who we get a partial tag, again, we can plug that partial tag into the license plate reader. Anytime that combination of numbers or letters comes through that reader, it will give us an alert, and we can begin to look for that vehicle. So there's some exciting things that that we're expecting in 2014 that will be a force multiplier for the men and women that are out there in the street every day, that I hope will never take the place of a living, breathing police officer, but it certainly does allow us to get the most out of the officers that we have out there.
Well, you've talked about there's also the call-in scams. You've talked about that, and of course, the city of Fayetteville went 80 days last year without a death, and then the first 10 days of 2014, 2 young people involved in murders, and you use the word permanency. As you look forward to trying to solve things before they happen, what's the biggest obstacle the Fayetteville Police Department has in dealing with crime?
I think it's really having the time to build relationships. We have done in the last 11 months, not that it wasn't being done before, but we have really focused on building relationships with our citizens. And that's the law-abiding citizens, and that's the bad guys too. If we're able to deal and build a relationship, let's say with a criminal, we know that that individual is a criminal, but we can build a relationship with them when we're not arresting them, when things are a little more relaxed. A lot of times we'll get great information, George. We'll get better cooperation and certainly less uses of force. But building relationships with the law-abiding folks allows us to now start to build trust. And you know what? If I get to know who you are, and I do, I trust you. I can share information with you. Maybe not information that I would have shared before I got to know you, but as importantly, you'll share information with me and know that I'll keep you as confidential as I possibly can. So if we start to build a relationship and we build that and we establish trust, that is a huge component in preventing crime in our city. So if there's a limiting factor in it, it's, again, going back to the need for more police officers. It's allowing my officers to have the time as they patrol the neighborhoods when they see someone out mowing their yard or washing their car or sitting on the front porch, having the time to stop the car, get out and visit with them, and learn what's going on from that homeowner's perspective in the neighborhood. You learn so much more from their eyes and from their experience than you ever will from our 10-hour a day in that neighborhood.
One of the Fayetteville Observer's top reporters and a tremendous writer, Greg Barnes, has been doing a series on crime. And most recently, he did one on fighting blight, and the issues of the neighborhoods and trash and all of that takes place. And I know that both you and the mayor have kind of taken a tour of that. Did you learn something through that tour that maybe you didn't know before?
Now, George, we cleaned up a lot of neighborhoods in my previous department simply by going in and cleaning up the landscape, cutting the underbrush, limbing up trees, taking the trash out. And you would be surprised at once you start to take over a neighborhood in that way, you take it over with criminal activity being decreased as well. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon that when you start to clean things up, folks start to take a little more pride. And I've got to give you an example that goes back to 20 years, where we responded one afternoon to one evening in the summer to a double murder on a street in Charlotte. And the next day, one of my friends, who was a community police officer for that neighborhood, was sent out to talk to the neighbors about the problems. Now, we just experienced a double murder on the street, on the sidewalk the night before. When that officer pulled up, there was a gentleman actually with a hose, hosing the blood off the sidewalk in front of his house. And Pat got out of the car and asked him, said, "Sir," it's kind of an open-ended question, "you have any problems in this neighborhood?" Now, you would have thought that old man would have said, "I had a double murder here last night." But he pointed to the lot across the street and he said, "If you people would get that cleaned up, clean that lot up there, all of our problems in this neighborhood would start to go away." We didn't believe him, but we got the lot bush hogged. We started to maintain a better presence the neighbors took a much greater interest and much more pride in the neighborhood, and crime did go down. Subsequently, 10 years later, the streets were renamed because they were notorious streets. One is now called Peaceful Way, I think, or Peaceful Glen. And it's just a different, it's a different neighborhood now. So cleaning up, that broken windows theory where you have a vacant house or a burned out house or some kind of trash pile, you clean that up, people are less likely to throw something else down. They're less likely to be involved in criminal behavior.
Well, the city of Fayetteville is, I don't even want to say lucky to have you. We're truly blessed to have you here with us as our police chief, and look forward to you continuing to not only fight crime, but continue to solve those murders, that we hope those numbers come down. You said, quote, at Fort Bragg, "I pledge to you that we will see a dramatic decrease in crime in 2014. You believe that, don't you?
Well, we just got our official numbers from the SBI today for 2013, and it was better than we expected. We actually had and I'm going to take any decrease, George, we had a 0.3% decrease in violent crime, but a 6.2% overall decrease in crime versus 2012. In January of 2014, our numbers now are a 14.5% decrease overall in crime for the month of January 2014 versus the month of January 2013. So my ambition, my goal, my expectation is that we're going to deliver, not just as a police department, but as a city, as partnerships with our communities, our neighborhood watches, the other city services. We're going to deliver a double-digit decrease, at least a substantial decrease in 2014. So I hope we'll be sitting back here this time next year talking about a great decrease that we had in 2014. And please understand, there's nothing special about me. I'm just a lucky guy that happens to live in a great city and lead a great police department.
Well, thank you. Stay tuned for more Behind the Badge.
The training I've had to be a homicide detective included death investigations, many schools at the Justice Academy in reference to suicide investigation, and also note-taking, interview techniques, those type classes. To prepare yourself to being a homicide detective, you need to be ready for the unexpected. You should be ready for things you've never seen before. Death is never a good thing. So you need to be ready to see older people, younger people, even babies. And that's something you can never train for. It's just something eventually you'll get used to. When you go home, you still think about that case. Sometimes you think about it. I think about it when I wake up in the morning, throughout the day. It's something you can never turn off. It's just something you just learn to live with. I'm the voice for the victim. My job is to find out who done it to this person, to speak out for them, because they're not able to speak anymore. So it's my job to bring justice to that victim. I think making notification to the family is really hard. It's something you think about, you never get used to it, because every notification is going to be different. They're never the same. The first thing, when I receive a call early in the morning for a call out, I'm already prepared. I have my clothes laid out. I have everything ready. Mentally, I'm ready for that call out. And once I arrive on the way to that scene, I'm constantly thinking, it all depends on when we're notified, how I prepare myself en route to the call. If it's a club shooting, I'm thinking about how many witnesses are there. Could the person still be on the scene? Could the person still be nearby? It's just so many things that's running through your head when you're on your way to the scene. And I actually plan to be there probably 20 to 30 hours. It depends on the scene. I watch some of the TV shows on television, and it amazes me how they try to put everything into 1 hour. And it is never 1 hour. There's no time limit on investigation. I think the most challenging part of our job is witnesses, to get people to come forward. In reference to a club shooting, we show up to a club shooting, it might be 200 to 300 people there. But when we arrive on scene, the majority of the people are either gone or the ones who are still there, they don't want to talk to you. That's probably the worst part of the job. It's not the worst part, but the most challenging part is to get the community to be involved. Because a homicide normally consists of three things. It's normally drugs, money, or sex. And most people, you can't get them to talk about the homicide. No one wants to be a witness. I think that's the most challenging thing for me is to try to get the people in the community to talk. And that's how you have to be a people person. As a homicide detective, you have to know how to speak to people. You just can't go into people, you just can't go into their homes or go into their neighborhoods and force them to tell you what you need to solve investigation. You have to be able to talk to them. It might take 1 day, it might take 2 days, it might take a week to talking to that person to finally have them to come forward to assist you with the investigation. But I think more cases could be solved. We will have less cold cases if more people in the community will be involved in the investigation. For me, it's the best feeling in the world is to solve a case and to go and tell the family after they've been waiting 2 to 3 years or more to let them know that the case has finally been solved. Because even though I go from case to case to case, the family of that victim, that's the only case they have in their life. Because most people, they never have any interaction with a homicide. So when they finally get that news that that case has been solved, they're overjoyed. It's a good feeling. And all the other stuff you felt in the past, you think, well, I keep banging my head up against the wall. Those are the rare moments when it's all worth it.
Well, when I came to the Fayetteville Police Department, I had already been in law enforcement for about 5 years. When I came to the Fayetteville Police Department, I had a plan in mind, and of course, I wanted to be a detective. And I knew that in order to be a good detective, I need to have a real solid grasp on every aspect of the criminal justice system. So I knew that as far as the evidence went, the evidence part of it and forensics and that whole science, I wanted to know a little more about that. So I actually laid down the badge and gun, if you will, and took a non-sworn position here at the Fayetteville Police Department as a forensic technician. And I worked in that capacity for about 1.5 years. During that time, I was able to see the crime scene from a different angle. The detective who's working or assigned the case is he has a lot of interaction with the people. He's taken a lot of what would be considered witness testimony down. And that's the part of the evidence that he was dealing with. Well, in forensics, I'm dealing more with the physical evidence. So learning how to put a good crime scene process together I think, has been very valuable for me. I have a really good understanding of the way that evidence works, the process that it takes as far as locating, documenting, photographing, collecting, and processing any evidence that may be found at a crime scene. So I think that 1.5 years that I took to work in forensics has been probably one of the most valuable 2-year or 1.5 year time slots in my career. We're not only getting called out to homicides, any suspicious death investigation, the Fayetteville Police Department's Homicide Squad would respond to, other than traffic fatalities. But when we get there, typically the first responders have already gotten there, your fire medics, your EMS, and the patrol guys. So communication with those guys, because they are the eyes and ears that were first there. They're the people that came into contact with the scene, with the victim, with any possible witnesses, sometimes even with the suspect before anybody else has, come in contact with them. So I think that a good communication between the detectives and the patrol guys and the first responders is key. And typically what happens is that when my phone rings, it never rings with good news. So when it rings and I'm informed of a homicide or a death scene we're going to need to go investigate or need to respond to, my drive into the Fayetteville Police Department is typically going to entail a couple of things. One, I'm going to be on the phone with my partner, the other homicide detective that's going to be responding. I'm also going to be on the phone with my supervisor. And the third group that I'll be on the phone with is the folks that are at the scene. A lot of times I like to find out which officer's there or which supervisor's there at the scene. I like to call them and just find out kind of what we have, what's been done, what needs to be done with regards to what they're seeing. So I think communication is probably the most important aspect of law enforcement from any angle. Good communication is key, and I think we've learned that if we invest in that, the ability to transfer information is huge. One of the common mistakes is that everybody thinks that the investigation stopped once the arrest was made. It's no longer sexy, if you will, after the arrest is made. But a lot of times the majority of the investigation takes place after the person's been arrested. People's attention spans are very short. And sometimes it's tough because the citizens or the public thinks that, okay, well, it's all over with now, the bad guy went to jail. One of the things that we found to be beneficial in homicide investigations is we like to go back to the scene or in that area and just do what's typically been referred to as a canvas, a neighborhood canvas. But literally all it is going and talking to folks. Sometimes people will have information and they don't think it's valuable. Well, they don't know if it's valuable or not because they're not running the investigation. They don't know what the investigators know. So it's been a valuable tool of ours to recanvass, and sometimes we'll do it 2 and 3 times. We'll go back to that neighborhood because we'll do one street and we talk to everybody on that street but the guy who lived at the third house on the left. And it's because he was at work he was at work when we went to talk with him. Well, sometimes we get the bang out of the book when we go back and talk to that one guy. He may be the guy with the piece of information that we need. You know, in order to be a homicide detective, you got to keep knocking on doors. You got to keep ringing phones. You got to keep talking to folks, because somewhere somebody has information that could very well close the case for you. We have a really high solvability rate in the city limits of Fayetteville with regards to homicides. So chances are, if you commit a homicide in the city limits of Fayetteville, we're going to catch you.